Welcome along, everyone, to a special Worldpool preview of day one of the York Ebor Festival. This Wednesday is going to be one of the best days of sport that we've had, certainly racing-wise, this season. Can't wait for it. Delighted to have the twin expertise, as ever, of John Blance and furthest away, of course, Graham Cunningham. Familiar faces to you. They're going to steer you through and find you a few winners as well. Let's have a look at the first race of the day. It is a sprint. It's one of York's customary fast and furious sprints as well, 1,100 metres. Handicappers, so the 5.5 furlongs right in front of the grandstands. And these are the runners. They're headed by Democracy Dilemma, Ross O'Ryan, Robert Cow. We're going to go down to the likes of Pilgrim, Holcomb Bay, who's in very good form indeed, Chagrin, Pocklington, Killian, after his recent move to Real Madrid. Killian under Holly Doyle, Vintage Clarets, Bergerac, JM Jungle ran well in this race last year. You go down to Never Dark and a horse called Copper Knight, who's got plenty of backstory at York. Indeed, this will be his 30th start at the track. Graham, let's bring in yourself. Welcome along. Looking forward to Holcomb Bay, who's in very good form.
Yes, thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. Yeah, this horse has got good York form himself. He's on a roll at the moment. This was slightly easier ground than he's likely to have on Wednesday. He doesn't win in flashy style, but he wins quite decisively. He went on from here to the Shergar Cup at Ascot and he romped. So he's gone up, I think, another £8, £10 for that correction. So he's in the form of his life, but he's going to have to improve again here, especially, John, as he's drawn 22.
Yes, that's not really what we want to be. You don't want to be really near side on the extremity. Certainly they tend to sort of gravitate over to the middle and the far side. So gate 22, not ideal. Echo everything that Graham said there. Absolutely right.
Well, what about gate 20 then? Pilgrim, we haven't seen the horse since winning a reasonably big meeting. Royal Ascot, of course, this was the start before, John.
Yeah, and the run in the Palace of Holyrood was an absolute belter and has been franked a lot by the likes of Chagrin, and one of the horses a bit further behind has gone on to win a listed race as well. This was the race that preceded it at Musselburgh, doing what Pilgrim does, getting out, showing good early speed. Early speed tends to hold up pretty well in this race. Interestingly, though, he's a three-year-old. Three-year-olds historically don't do that well here. There hasn't been a huge entrant from that particular generation, but this time round there is, and there are a lot of progressive ones in there, so I wouldn't be put off if you're on a three-year-old this time.
Yeah, he's quick and aggressive and perhaps better equipped to offset the high draw than Holcomb Bay.
You mentioned the fact that Chagrin was behind that horse, John, at Royal Ascot. Chagrin back to winning ways again at Goodwood last time. I think you've got a seeking suspicion you like this fella.
Well, yeah, he did me a bit of a favour on this particular occasion. You remember that kind of thing, Nick, don't you? So,
you do, don't you?
He's just off the back of the speed, surged home towards the centre of the track, which is not always the best place to be in sprints at Goodwood. I think, obviously, it was part of Mick Appleby's absolutely golden week there as well. The first horse we looked at, Holcomb Bay, has gone up a lot in the weight. I think the £5 rise for this, Graham, was very fair.
And I think a slightly more patient ride helped him here. He's normally right on the pace. He'll have plenty of horses to lead him here. Just a likeable, banging form sprinter.
Should we have a look at last year's running of this very race, Graham? Can this form come to the fore again?
It might do, and this gives a good example of when you get a big field, you can get two groups, and the far side held the edge for a long way. One or two horses came calling late on, John, but as you can see from last year, one or two horses on the far side did well. JM Jungle came out of the pack on the near side. He's probably still the same horse, John, but he was slightly below par at Goodwood last time, I thought.
He was a little bit outpaced, yeah, down the the downhill stretch there. I still quite like him, though, in this spot. He was three-year-old last year in this race, gate 19. He's gravitated over to the far side, and he's run a pretty good race, all things considered.
This tells you the nature of the race. Look at that, 4, 5, 6-way go. It would not be any surprise to see it similar on Wednesday.
Yeah, you're going to get the class angles later in the car, but this is going to be a proper sprint handicap, Graham, to get us going and start the Worldpool right. How do you see this going? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, I think and hope I've got one that we haven't mentioned yet. I'm calling the cops here. Desert Cop, to be exact. He's only £2 higher than when he won at the Guineas meeting, a red-hot handicap. He's run better than the bare result suggests. A bit too keen behind Holcomb Bay in the Shergar Cup last time. Significantly, lads, he's got Oisin Murphy back aboard for the first time since Newmarket. 6 Desert Cop, 4 Pilgrim, 8 Chagrin and 1 Democracy Dilemma. But Desert Cop, a lifelong shot, I hope.
Yeah, Chagrin on top for me. I think he'll go very well. It's a very workable rise in the weights he's been given. Democracy Dilemma, early speed, low draw. That's a good combination to have on your side here in the opening race. JM Jungle, he's got a nice draw as well. I think he can replicate his good run from last year. And you've got to have 1 or 2 closers in there as well. There's going to be a fierce gallop on here. And Squealer, I think, comes in at a big price. Could go quite well here at York and maybe nick 4th.
Gents, I wish you well. I'm going to go for one that hasn't been mentioned at all, the Irish runner Bold Optimist, number 18. The trainer earmarked going to this race after winning last time. That form's been franked. I think he's very fast. I think he's very good. Number 18, Bold Optimist, in what looks a very open race. Best of luck, whatever you're going for. First group race is the first two-year-old race as well. It's Group 3 for the Tatos Stakes, race 2, 1,400 metres. So we're going to learn a little bit more about what could be a stellar set of juveniles. Diablo Rojo heads them. You've got Jouncey, Mr. Chaplin, further down Ruling Court, and the Lion in Winter for the powerhouses that are Godolphin and Ballydoyle. Yarug at the bottom looks quite a talent after winning at Kempton last time. This could be a very, very good running of the Acomb Stakes. They are your runners. And Graham, let's have a look at the Godolphin horse, who had dogs barking going into this sole start so far at Sandown. There was expectation going in. I don't think anyone was let down.
No, he had the dogs barking for his breeze. 2.3 million euro, son of Justify. And he didn't quicken instantly, John, but when he did, he really, really surged. He came a long way clear. Second and third have franked the form. This looks a crackerjack of an Acomb Stakes, but he looks a potential Group 1 animal.
Yeah, he smashed up into 4 to 9 on debut for this, and they clearly knew, didn't they?
They did.
Passed a lot of horses in a very short space of time at a track Sandown where it's not always easy to do that. So he's clearly got all sorts of potential.
He has indeed. And Charlie Appley's got some very good two-year-olds, so we'll see exactly where he is in the pecking order. The Lion in Winter represents Aidan O'Brien, John. And again, given the fact that we're only 1 from 1, there was expectation, well, there's certainly been expectation coming out of this, because this horse, along with Ruling Court, are already fancies for classics next year.
Yeah, I love this performance. He's moved up into a quickening pace in the final couple of furlongs. Now, when he's got to them, he's quickened further still. It was the performance of a horse who's really going places. I think he's been entered up all over the place.
Yep.
Significant. They've decided to run him here. 7 furlongs, absolutely ideal on breeding. I think he's very, very talented.
Yeah, it's a classic Godolphin Ballydoyle head-to-head here, with a few others in the mix. He took a good while to engage top gear. And I think this is a horse who's going to excel over a 1.25 miles plus. If he can win this race at 7, he could be very good. But
I agree with that.
I think he might have a flat spot in him as well.
OK, his form's been boosted as well. Let's have a look at Yarug, who we know that a little bit more about by the fact that he's had a few starts. John, I was really impressed with this last time, the Kempton success under a penalty, under the excellent Tom Marquand. They are well within their right to have a crack at a group race now.
I think they are, yeah. It was a very professional performance, got to the front quickly, then they did slow down the pace quite a bit. It wasn't a particularly good overall time figure because of the slow middle part of the race, but he's held them all off here, shown, as I say, lots of talent and professionalism, Graham.
Quite a few horses not too far behind, though. He's earned a mark of 90 for this. You've got to be at least triple figures to have any chance of winning an Acomb. Up in class, got experience, could run well. I'll be surprised if he wins.
Yeah, I think there might be a big 2 element to this, and we hope that they both stand their ground, those being Ruling Court and the Lion in Winter. Is one of them on top for you?
Yeah, it's a long way off next year's Derby. We have 2 of the leading candidates in the anti-post market. I'm going to go for Ruling Court ahead of the Lion in Winter. I just suspect he might be more of a 7 furlong horse than Aidan O'Brien's colt. 6, 7, 4, 11 in a compelling Acomb Stakes for me.
Yeah, I like that performance of the Lion in Winter in Ireland, so I'm going to have him over Ruling Court, so a slight disagreement here, but it's a nice, it's got very good queue potential. I think is probably the safest way of putting this. Jouncey in for third. The race does, for me, tend to fall away a little bit, but I think we've got 2 proper classic contenders for next year at the top here. Jouncey in for third, as I said, ran well at Goodwood. And the Waco Kid got knocked around at Goodwood in the early part of the race, does have a lot of early speed, and if he can get away nicely, might run a decent race at a big price, but I think it's definitely about those 2 at the top.
And as a top race caller as yourself, the Lion, Ruling Court, there's some good show-stopping lines as well to go with one or 2 of these. If anyone can find a show-stopping line at Kempton in a classified state.
Roll of Honour, Chaldean, Phoenix of Spain, Rule of Law, Dundonald, who went on to be a very good horse in Hong Kong. It generally takes a good horse to win this.
I hope we're going to see more than just one, we'll see. But on top for me, it's number 6 for Godolphin. It's Ruling Court. That should be a really good running of the Acomb. Race 3 is the Great Voltigeur, which is run for 3-year-olds. It's over 2,400 metres. Who knows, we might just have the next St Ledger winner waiting in the wings. We did last year in the form of Continuous. 4 connections who are going to be represented once again. Let's show you the runners. There are just 6 of them. Los Angeles has got the weight to give away. Stablemate Illinois a little bit as well. Dear Mile, Euphoric, King's Gambit up in trip, Space Legend, James Doyle. Let's go to the chaps and get the thoughts of Graham Cunningham with the Derby at Epsom first up. And Los Angeles stepped forward after this and won at the Curragh. We know that, but it was a huge run when actually considering the race that he raced, or the way that he raced at Epsom.
Yeah, key horses both highlighted. Los Angeles was right on the speed and I think helped set the platform for City of Troy to feast. Deramile was held up sensibly, was probably in a good spot and plugged on for minor honours. I would expect Los Angeles to confirm this form. We move on from Epsom to the Curragh. He won the Irish Derby, Los Angeles, and he did it while giving a good impression of Idle Jack. He did no more than was necessary.
No, and he had it nicely set up by one or two of his stable companions. It was all a bit Tour de France, this, I thought,
yes, it was.
The Irish Derby. It was all nicely set up for him. That said, he was on the front end. He was then, it looked like he was in trouble as Ambiente Friendly loomed up, but because they hadn't gone overly quick in the early stages, he was still able to engage that big raking stride here, stick his neck out and get back up, and yeah, a mile and a half at York, right up his alley.
When you watch him, you can see that he seems to be keeping something for himself. So that's high quality classic form, but we must bear in mind that having won that Group 1, he now has a £5 penalty.
He does, and strictly on the figures, he doesn't necessarily come out on top, but we'll see. Illinois, we can talk about his stablemate, Graham, who, this is at the beginning of the season. A lot of water has gone under plenty of bridges since then, both at home and internationally.
Yeah, we can have a look at this for information purposes, but it's not the real Illinois. The ground was very, very holding at Leopardstown early in the season. Since then, John, he's gone on to good things. Second at Lingfield behind Ambiente Friendly, Wandering, winning the Vase, Queen's Vase, edging left, Wandering again, and second in the Grand Prix de Paris last time when he looked a real honest galloper. With the weight allowance against Los Angeles, he comes firmly into this.
He certainly does. I think these two will be battling it out in the closing stage. It was a massive run in the Queen's Vase, on the speed in a properly run race the whole way through, and the horse that beat him in France could well be very good in soft ground again. So yeah, got a very, very good chance.
Let's have a look at some recent track form. This was a completely different race. This was the York Stakes over Shorter at the back end of July. It turned into a real dash. He took on the older horses. John, the 3-year-old record in this race was appalling. How do you think King's Gambit ran, and do you think he's going to be better up in trip?
Well, did it ever turn into a real dash? 120% of the average speed here. They started like it was the Ascot Gold Cup and finished like it was the Nunthorpe. It was a farcical race, really. But King's Gambit has proven ability to cope with it. Alphalela is an absolute York standing dish. So this is a good effort, but it's going to be a totally different race on Wednesday.
I think he's got a good chance, this horse. I think he should stay the mile and a half. I don't really want to judge him too much on that. It was a bit of a silly race. But his Newbury handicap win was mighty impressive, and he was unlucky at Royal Ascot. So I think he represents a danger to the Balliol duo here.
Let's have a look at Space Legend for Wathnan Racing for William Haggis. The proud Yorkshireman loves nothing better than minutes at this meeting. This was the Cocked Hat back in May, Graham, and has since gone on to run a very good race behind Calandagan, who we'll be talking about, Royal Ascot. It certainly didn't happen last time at Newmarket.
Yeah, he's changed ownership since this day. He was definitely unlucky in this race at Goodwood. He just didn't get any room until too late. Came charging late to run Maidan close. Since then, very good second at Royal Ascot behind a potential top liner in Calandagan. Last time I John, 4 in a race at Newmarket, steady pace, pulled hard. I think we can give him a pass on that.
Yeah, it didn't suit him at all. He can toss out that piece of form, but I think he would need a pretty strong gallop to aim at here, given what we know about him. And he might get it, but it's a bit of an if. OK, boys. So Graham, are you going to go for Ballydoyle? If so, which one, or are you going elsewhere?
Well, I think it's an oddity that Britain could only muster even 3 entries for this at the 5-day stage. I think one of them has a serious chance, King's Gambit. I think he's firmly on the up. He gets £5 from Los Angeles. That tips the scales in his favour for me. Yep. 5, 1, 2 and 6 in the Great Voltigeur.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Los Angeles on top. I think as well he probably just settle in behind Euphoric, who'll set the kind of sectionals that Coolmore will tell him to set. Illinois in there for second, so it's a fairly obvious cue. King's Gambit, I echo everything that Graham said. He's clearly a horse who's on the up, and Dare a Mile. If there is a bit more of a gallop, he could come into it as well. And it was a good run in the Derby, there's no doubt about it, but Los Angeles on top for me. OK, I think Los Angeles could win the Ledger in a few weeks' time, but I think King's Gambit on these terms could beat him on Wednesday. So it's number 5, King's Gambit on top for me. Big race of the day. This Worldpool Wednesday at York is the 4th race. It's the Jumpmont International, and it is going to have so much talked about going into it, given the quality of the 13 runners who have been declared for this test. Let's show you the course map, all 2,080 metres of it, as they'll swing left,
head into that long home straight at the Knavesmire, and we'll find out one by one as they wilt away who's going to come out on top. Alpha Layla, good course record, heads them. Docklands place at Royal Ascot's there. Japan represented through Juretza Isra, Royal Ascot winner. Maljoum, class act up in trip. Further down, Zarakem for France. Blue Stocking, they've gone to this race, not the Yorkshire Oaks a day later. Ambiente Friendly second in the Derby. Calandagan for France. City of Troy, the star that he is. Ghostwriter. What a field it is assembled for this race. Graham Cunningham alongside. This is, well, I'm so glad they're declared, not least, of course, City of Troy. And after the Guineas blemish, this was much more like it at Epsom.
It was. You say what a field, and I get it. International, 13 runners. Not too many Group 1 winners on deck. Here's one, and he makes probably a decent Derby field look pretty limited, because once he takes the measure of Ambiente Friendly, he powers on, and it took ages for Ryan Moore to pull him up. So this is perhaps the hallmark piece of form going into this year's International. He went on from here, John, to the Coral Eclipse. He didn't please everyone, but there were at least partial excuses, perhaps.
Well, I mean, he just ran. The more you dig into the times in this race, he ran a sort of pretty par effort, given how the race was set up for him. He was just off the back of the speed in a race where they didn't go overly quick. They haven't posted a big time figure. Al Riffa's probably the horse to take out of the Eclipse, but that's an argument for another day. But this was a good effort on ground that maybe wasn't ideal for him either. Back at the 10 furlongs, obviously. So, yeah, he's got the job done, and he definitely deserves his chance at the top of the market.
He's not terrible form now either. It looks better now than it did. Exactly.
Al Riffa romped away with the German Group 1, and staying on into fourth, that See the Fire went and ran very close in the Tatos Stakes.
Exactly.
Aidan O'Brien said it was specialist ground, and I sort of get it. It was quite holding ground that day, and I do think this horse has the ability and the potential to improve again. I think York, fast ground, long straight, pacemaker in, this is the day for City of Troy. If he is an absolute ace, he'll show it on Wednesday.
Graham, let's talk about one of the older horses in the form of Alpha Layla, who's got a good track record. We know that courtesy of his wins in the York Stakes, one of which coming just the other day in a farce of a race as it was. He's been found out at Group 1 company. Can he make his presence felt on Wednesday?
I think he can make his presence felt, John. Whether he can win, I rather doubt at the age of 5 with a rating of 1-1. He did pretty well to win this, because as we've touched on already, this was a dawdle with a capital D. He's got an excellent York record, but he's also had a crack at Zarakem this season and came up a bit behind him. What do you make of him? Yeah,
well, 8 of the last 10 winners of this had a rating above 120. He hasn't got that. He's not that far away from it. Obviously, he likes a nose. My gate 11, though, is going to be a bit tricky as well. For a horse like this, you'd want to have everything in his favour. He sneaks into the numbers for me, but obviously not on top.
Right, Maljoum, let's have a look at his running on second notable speech in the Sussex Stakes on a big Worldpool day at Goodwood a few weeks ago, Graham. Connections will be delighted that effectively they've got their horse back after time spent away. They are well within their right to have a go up in trip.
I think, yeah, it's an odd one. His last win came in April 2022. He's had a few training problems, but he came home strongly behind a good Guineas winner here in notable speech. He's up in trip. The handicapper now thinks he's worth a rating of 119, up from 110. Question is, John, will he stay the extra 2 and a bit furlongs?
I think, given his run style, I think he probably will. Yeah. And he's run some really good races. That St James Palace Stakes from a couple of years ago was probably his best. But haven't quite got him in, but he's a very talented horse. OK, I'm really pleased that in the last few years of this, we've had 4, 6, 6, 7 small fields, much bigger this time around. And one addition who we might not have thought earlier in the week or perhaps prior was Blue Stocking, Graham. But she does run. She doesn't run on Thursday. It's this race, the sponsored race instead.
Exactly. She is a Juddmonte owned filly in Juddmonte's flagship race. Now, we pick her up on easy-ish ground at the Curragh, looking like it's going to be hard work in the Pretty Polly as Emily Upjohn skates clear. But she stays really strongly, this filly. We know she gets a 1.5 miles very well. She went on from this race to run a very good second in the King George. But it was a pretty tough shift for all the runners that day, John, and she's out again fairly quickly. Yeah, they went really hard in that race. She was well positioned, quite a long way off that pace in the King George. She's a funny horse because she's never actually won at 12 furlongs, and yet she runs like 12 furlongs as a trip. I think she'd need a strong gallop here over the 10 to really come into it. She might get it. Hans Anderson in the field, of course, for Coolmore. She's not quite in the numbers for me, but we'll see. Yeah, I've left her out. She does have a good York record, though.
Well, I want to come to you, get you 1, 2, 3, 4, but it is the Juddmonte International, and there is an international field to it. Duretsa for Japan. You've got Calandagan. You've got Zarakem as well. So it's living up to its title. Do you make any appeal, or do they make appeal to you?
Well, Duretsa's fascinating. It's great to have a Japanese horse on show. He won the Japanese St. Leger, mile 7 or thereabouts, and he looked really impressive.
Yep.
Then he ran very well when he chased home Prognosis over a shorter trip. Zeno Rob Roy ran in this race in 05 and finished second. I think Zeno Rob Roy was a slightly more accomplished horse than Duretsa, John, but he adds a fair bit of colour to the mix, and tactically, he's likely to go forward just behind the pacemaker.
Well, let's hope so. I think that's their best chance because obviously the form over a good bit further in Japan would suggest that you need to be making sure there's a proper gallop. So it'll be interesting to see how they ride him. Gate 6 should be able to get into a nice posse, maybe just in behind Hans Andersen or taking him on at the head of affairs. So we'll see. Fascinating contender though.
Zeno Rob Roy actually finished second to then the Italian-trained Electrocutionist. That was a proper international running. Anyway, we digress. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the big one.
This is the day for City of Troy. This is the day we find out whether he's a genuine ace or just a really good horse. But I think he can show his true colours here, so I'm going to go for him on top. Of 11, Calandagan, we haven't mentioned him, but he looked dynamite when running away with the King Edward VII at Royal Ascot. 8, Zarakem, who ran so well at Royal Ascot, and 1, Alf Layla. But this is the day for City of Troy, John. He's under siege from Japanese, Irish, Brits and French.
Well, I think he's likely to run an extremely good race, but I'm going to go with Ambiente Friendly on top. I've been waiting for this horse to come back to 10 furlongs, stop the Derby a furlong and a half out. He's absolutely cruising. And I think maybe if he gave Rab Havlin the chance to ride that race again, he might have been a bit busier in the saddle as City of Troy was kind of coming through up his wing mirrors there. And he ran a really good race as well in the Irish Derby for about 11 furlongs and then just seemed to run out of gas. So I think 10 furlongs is absolutely ideal. Nice draw as well, gate 2. I think you get a good position. City of Troy in there for second. Obviously, I think booked to run a very good race. Calandagan's closing sectional at Royal Ascot, or closing last couple of furlongs, tremendous. We don't really know how good he is yet, given his French form as well. Interesting, they've decided to go back to 10 furlongs, and Alf Layla with all that York form as well. So, 3-year-olds for me, 10, 12, 11 and 1.
Well, when you're fascinated when you think that Calandagan's trainer had Goliath for the King George as well. He didn't send him there, so that's really interesting in itself. Gents, that was great stuff. Looking forward to the big race itself. And I'm going to follow Graham in. I think City of Troy, he can prove his worth on Wednesday. Number 12 on top for me, and the best race that there is. Don't miss it. You will enjoy it on this service, and really looking forward to the big race itself. The Jumpmont International, race 4 from York on Wednesday. Race 5 is the Stayers race on the day. The Stayers Handicap, a heritage handicap. It's a Class 2 race. North of 3,000 metres, only those with copper-bottom stamina, and the reserves need apply. Right, these are the runners. Samui travels over from Gordon Elliott. He's had success at York before. You go down to Divine Comedy. Iron Lion we'll be talking about. Great Bedouin, Great Shirty. Get Shirty and Co, I should say. Over the page, there are other runners as well. And these are they. Knightswood never misses a big festival. Forza Auto, it's got a history in this race. Bring Back Memories down to Robert Johnson. And Quantum Leap. Samui, let's have a look at a really potentially sexy profile, Graham, of an Irish raider. Gordon Elliott, as mentioned, has had success at this track before.
Absolutely bloodless, bolted up win last time. The horses behind him are able. They're no second races, John. He had to go up a long way in the handicap. The handicap has hammered him with a 13-pound rise, but quite significantly, this was his fast ground debut. Hadn't raced on top of the ground before, and it seemed to suit him really well.
And only his third run on the flat. He was a pretty good hurdler without being a brilliant one. Interesting to see what level he can achieve on the level. OK, let's have a look at Glorious Goodwood back, well, less than a few weeks on from what will be this day on Wednesday. Great Bedouin finished third. Knightswood finished fifth. Align the Stars was the winner of this. Fairbanks was in second. My view, John Blance alongside, I wonder what yours is that this fella, Great Bedouin in particular, will get a little bit further. I think he's well worth a go at this trip. Yeah, quite a few of these got into it late. It was an interesting race. There was a bit of a slow down mid-race, then they sprinted again from quite a long way out, and there was a real active finish. Knightswood's run a really good race as well, given what happened, and the winner got a beautiful ride from Joe Fanning at the head of affairs. Yeah, Knightswood, not for the first time, a bit unlucky, hemmed in on the inside rail there. He doesn't miss too many big dates. So let's have a look at Iron Lion. Iron Lion for David Nolan and David O'Mara. He's having a reasonable season, Graham.
This horse is in great form, Iron Lion, but keep an eye, blue and white hoops towards the right of picture 3 from Rayon Knightswood, who gets completely hemmed in at a crucial point. What I like about Iron Lion, he's progressing really well. His stable, David O'Mara, are in great form, and he's got a kick, this horse. For a middle distance 1.5 mile horse, he's got a kick, and he's also got 1.6 mile, 2 mile decent horses in the pedigree. So I like both these horses for different reasons, but Iron Lion and Knightswood make a close note of both of those two.
OK, we can have a look at some recent Newmarket form. Ensured coming out on top for the Training Alliance. John of Jamie and so on, Dr Richard Newland, they're having a good time. I think those cheek pieces, you can spot them from a mile off. Look how big they are. They were on for the first time and they weren't a negative.
I love big cheek pieces as a race caller, and this horse up in trip on this particular, well, here over the 12th line, up to the 2 miles for York on Wednesday afternoon. I think that will suit this horse. There's not much pace in this race either, so I think if they ride him forward with an intention to get the trip, I don't think he'd be too far away.
Love a bit of Happy Valley form at York. This horse had 11 runs in Hong Kong for David Hall, went very close at Happy Valley one night. He seems to be in great form for his new stable.
We haven't even mentioned last year's winner of the race, Falls at Auto, who's back for more. Does he make your 4? Who's in it?
Does not.
Oh.
3, Iron Lion on top. I'm quite keen on this horse. Difficult handicaps, but I like the look of this fella. 3, 10, 1 and 8. Iron like a lion in York.
Doesn't quite work that, but I can see what you're doing there, Greg. OK. Forza Auto for me. Did win this race last year. Not a huge amount of form towards the back end of last year, but there was definite signs of life in the Northumberland Plate the other week. Was on the wrong part of the track in the closing stages and is well treated on last year's run. Gets gate 1 as well, which is not to be sniffed at. So Forza Auto, I think, will go well. Divine Comedy's been running really well of late.
Yes.
Differently run races as well, over longer trips, shorter trips. Very versatile, like him. Insured for the reasons given up in trip, I think will go well and should be on the sharp end, which might be the place to be. And Samui, who knows what level this horse can attain on the flat at the moment, so has to go in.
Forza Auto, I've thrown myself off a cliff with this season. I'm not going to do it once again. So on top, I'm going to go for Divine Comedy, horse number 2, who was mentioned there by John. But in the Stayers race, race 5, best of luck, whatever you're going for. Right, we work our way towards the back end of the card. On Wednesday, this big Worldpool day at York, 1,000 metres for the fillies handicap. That is the shortest distance you're going to get. This will be rapid. All under in less than a minute. Designer, we'll be talking about her in a few moments' time. You go down to Miss Attitude, Pepsi Cat, Star of Lady M, she's a credit to Connections, Profitable Edge and Chanting, down to Midnight Affair, Alakazam, Hope Hurt You Never, under Mia Nichols. A famous racing family, that rider. Should we talk about a filly or mare now who needs little introduction in a lot of ways, Graham? The fact that Designer tends to run in this race and every time she does, she wins it. Yeah,
the only introduction she needs is that it's her introduction for this season because she's been off the track for 319 days. But she won this race in 2022. She repeated the feat in 2023, so it's just a case, John, of whether she's produced cherry ripe after a long break.
Yeah, we talked about the draw with reference to that first race and the 5 furlongs, or the 5.5 furlongs there. She won this race, gate 14 of 14. That is no mean feat at all. Take what Graham says about the fact that she hasn't run this season, but she has gone well fresh in the past. I think they put this date in the diary, ringed it for a while, and thought we'll get a cherry ripe for that.
I would say so. It's been a proven success rate. Right, Miss Attitude. Let's have a look at another Worldpool bit of form. Miss Attitude just touched off by Tatos Stakes, John, at Goodwood, and she is having a good season.
Look how this filly travels. I mean, she absolutely motored through this race, and she's almost overhauled Tatos Stakes in the closing stages, who probably had the run of the race, given the way it went, because one of the other big front runners didn't get out of the stalls. But I thought this was a really good run from the second. First 2 well clear of the rest, Graham.
Yep.
Gate 13's a bit tricky, but I think she'll go very well.
I do. She's a smooth traveller. She's been dead consistent and progressive. Clear of the remainder against the boys at Goodwood, back against the girls. She looks a major player. Quick line, 2 lines on Designer, actually. She's had that long break. She's had a breathing treatment. She has the tongue tie for the first time. OK, let's have a look at some other potential winners of this race. This is form we've already talked about from earlier in the day, Graham. Chagrin came out on top and might have enhanced the form after race 1. Gotta Love a Grey, we're going to talk about, who finished in second, and Chanting was there as well. This is more Goodwood form. Yeah, and when you watch this race, John, you have to think that Got to Love a Grey has got a really good chance of confirming the form with Enchanting, and as you suggested, Chagrin might well have polished the form in race 1 at day 1 at York. So she's back in good nick, and I think a £2 rise for this Pretty fair.
I quite liked her at 50 to 1 at Royal Ascot. That to send out the local constabulary for her, unfortunately. But this was a much, much better performance. She's running some pretty high-quality races, this filly, as well. I think gate 11's a bit tricky, but the early speed will be definitely something in her favour.
GC, 1, 2, 3, 4.
4, Miss Attitude for me. She's been consistent, progressive, and I think she's still a pound or two ahead of the handicapper. 2, Got to Love Her Great, 10 and 6. 4, 2, 10 and 6 in the fillies dash.
I'm going to go with Star of Lady M here.
What a mare.
Stall 4. She's got a little bit to find with Designer on last year's race, but she does have a good draw here, and she's just so consistent, and regardless of how races are run, seems to find a way to go very well. I've got Designer in there for second, Miss Attitude in for third for all the reasons that we gave. Gutsy Girl's interesting. Not too sure she'll be great value, but she's got plenty of upside to her. Loads of late pace in that race at Kempton. She's a horse going places, and she goes in the numbers as well.
John, I'm going to follow you in. She's run 13 times this year. She's getting better. She's won 4 times this season. It's Star of Lady M to win a competitive filly sprint. Best of luck, whatever you're going for. Last race of the day, as we reach race 7, run locally 5:20. It's 1,200 metres for a nursery, so it's for the 2-year-olds and a handicap, and they'll be rocketing up the home straight there. It's a big field, 17 of them. It Ain't 2 heads them. Sex on Fire's there. Artagnan we'll definitely be talking about under James Dorr for Wathman Racing. Yes, I'm Marley. Over the page, there are others. Clover Time, Far Above the Law, down to Managing Director, Number, East Tyrone, Peninsula Power. And not for the first time in this particular preview, Graham, we're going to revisit 3 weeks ago, another big summer festival, Glorious Goodwood, and a nursery that was won by Artagnan, who's long been quite well rated by Carl Burke.
Yeah, and he blossomed on his handicap debut here. Quick line on each of the 4 contenders we can mention. Artagnan, decisive, up to 6 furlongs here, John. Came in tie, stayed on strongly, a good second, personal best. Yes, I'm Marley, more towards the near side, only beaten 3 lengths into 5th. And Sex on Fire, after a good second at Haydock, pretty choppy run here, but Artagnan pretty decisive at the end.
It was, yeah. I'd have been keener on this horse if he'd drawn slightly better. He's going to be out on the limb towards the grandstand rail. I think he still goes in. It's tricky for horses. Some of the others Graham was talking about there. Horses held up in this race don't have a particularly good effort. It generally goes to those on the speed. Artagnan won't be too far away, but it's the draw that I'm concerned about.
Scatterpenny, John. Scatterpenny we've seen twice, has won twice. This daughter of Ella Cam for the extremely local and popular trainer or joint trainer Nick and David Easterby.
As ever with nurseries, you're often dealing with horses who've never run in a handicap, and this is one. This was a race where they were spread-eagled all over Pontefract. The second is a reasonably useful performer. They were clear of the rest. Should settle in behind a strong gallop here. Graham has the potential to be quite good, but we just don't quite know yet from a handicapping perspective.
I've taken the chance on her. I don't particularly like the race, but she's 2 from 2. Took them by surprise with a big price win first time. Just one thing to mention on that. Winning time there, very stiff track at Ponty, 77.8 seconds. They'll break the line in about 70 seconds here. Yeah. It's a very different test, but I do think she's progressing well.
She would have a little bit more up the sleeve than Graham It Ain't 2, who we've seen plenty of since making the debut at the Craven meeting in mid-May. Has been some of the big fixtures. Is having a good first year on the track. Yeah,
that old cliche about top weights in nurseries is bogus sometimes, but this filly is pretty useful, and she's got plenty of runs on the board, John, including this solid placed effort in a warm fillies nursery at Newmarket.
Yeah, when she was carried across the track as well, it really wasn't ideal. The run prior to that in the super sprint was pretty good too, evidencing that she definitely wants this sort of trip of 6 furlongs. I think if you want a horse to run well, maybe not win, but to run well at a decent price, It Ain't 2. Gate 10, not ideal, but I think she's the one.
Are we looking at a lurker or one that has shown the hand that little bit more?
Well, I'm going for an unbeaten filly. I won't be scattering too many pennies at this. I think it's a really difficult puzzle. But number 5, Scatterpenny, has looked really good in 2 starts so far. 6, Artagnan, solid handicap form at Goodwood. 2, Moving Force, down in class after a trip to France. And 3, Sex on Fire. 5, 6, 2, 3, without massive confidence in a nightcap.
Yeah, it's a tricky race, but I'm going to go with that class dropper, Moving Force. Nicely drawn, should get a nice run in transit as far as this distance is concerned as well. Went up to the 6 furlongs at Shaunty on soft ground last time. They can discount that run. The Nursery Company, hopefully if the ground stays quick, should go well. It Ain't 2 for the reasons given there. Sex on Fire, if you want to hold up horse off what would be a pretty strong gallop to pick its way through, that could be that one. And Scatterpenny for the reasons that Graham gave, but concentrating towards the top of the handicap.
Love it. Right, I'm going to go for Artagnan as well, who's had that rise, but it's half sibling of Marshman, and I think there's more to come for horse number 6, Artagnan. Thank you very much indeed to John and to Graham for their work. We'll see you again on Thursday as the Worldpool will continue on day 2 of the Ebor Festival. But best of luck, whatever you're going for, up and down the card on day 1 Wednesday.